the next item and say, oh, you know what, this one's corroded, this one's, so there's condition, and then there's capacity, which I think is where the deficiency comes in. Is that, am I viewing that correctly? One's kind of like the shape of what's there, and the other is it big enough to move what it needs to move?
Yeah, so I will defer to Cheng on the full analysis there, but you're right, there's two different things. But the survey, we're not going to go through, or they're not going to go through every single line to see what the problem is.
Right.
If there's, you know, a failure or whatever, they're going to do their overall analysis to determine where the hot spots are. Not necessarily because of flow, like in the hydrologic modeling, that'll come up later, but where the hot spots are based on talking to staff, where there's issues, where the CMP pipes are, from the plans that we have. Those are the types of things. So, but as far as the modeling, that comes after that. Does that answer that, or would you? Okay, so let me go back then to Councilmember Kemp's question about the geodatabase refinement and GIS and model training. So the modeling and training, since we handle the GIS in-house, we don't need the training on the system that we have already implemented. Mm-hmm. So that's where we can take stuff out. The refinement, we already are working with, we have the database set up that things can be put into there. The stuff that the information that they're going to collect and put together is going to be in a database that we can merge. Mm-hmm. So there's not the need for them to refine the database. We're going to be able to have it set up for them.
Understood.
So it's not a duplicate.
In the cost proposal itself, I see the primary vendor and potentially a couple of subcontractors. And one of those subcontractors is Geosyntec.
Oh, no.
So, oh, yes.
I don't mean to no like bad, but like, oh, man, okay.
Page 53 of 84 of the
didn't even see
PDF, to
it.
be precise.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Is there, and I don't have a problem with that, that's not why I raise it. I'm curious, is there any
Overlap,
Are they in sync, for lack of better description?
yeah. Don't want
Of
to,
what they're doing now.
Or
Yeah.
are they a completely different group?
yeah, well, right. Don't want to pay them twice for the same analysis.
What they're doing, to be clear.
So based on my understanding, what they're doing now is more like geotechnical groundwater component.
Yep.
What they are proposing with us for this master plan, they're looking for a green infrastructure perspective. Is there any opportunity to combine the stormwater facility with the green infrastructure facility? Look at potential LID location sites, the benefit of implement LID, reduce storm runoff. Those are their scope in this master plan.
I see.
So different.
So it's purely coincidental. Okay.
Any other questions? Any public comment on this item? Okay, let's bring it back to council. Any discussion or
I
motions?
think you had a hand raised in the audience.
Oh, I didn't, okay, sorry. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Members of council, I guess the
Would
only
you please
question...
introduce yourself? for
Yes,
the
please.
camera?
I'm sorry. I'm Scott Rosenberg, 2408 Via Ramon. I suppose the only question I had is that with the study and the proposed amount of work that I'm looking at here in this memo, is it prudent to include some of the areas that are affected from the Malaga Cove area that have a substantial amount of runoff from what looks to be the building owners in the plaza area? Does it make sense to include catch basins to grab that water that's just sort of running down the street and along what they call Sandbag Lane? That would be my open-ended question for council.
My
and the
guess is when
consultants.
staff provides information on hotspots, that'll be on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Is that true, Steve?
So part of the system that they have to analyze is not only the deficiencies of the actual material or whatever's failing, but also the capacity of the system. Master plans are oftentimes put together to determine what growth is going to occur in an area, not only from the growth of improvements, but also the growth of runoff. So those will be reviewed because we still have to have the water go into the same spot. Malaga Creek is a large area over here where a lot of the storm drains drain to over there. So sizing of the system will be addressed within the storm drain master plan. It'll be rough guesses or rough design parameters of where things should be installed, but it won't be the actual scope of work. And once it gets to that point where that report is defining what needs to be done, then that's when a scope of work is put together and saying, all right, well, maybe there is another catch basin that's needed here, but it's premature at this point.
Right, it needs to come from the analysis.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, council, any other discussion, direction, or do you have a motion for me?
I'm ready to make a motion if there's no discussion. I'll move that we award a professional services contract to Wood Rogers, Inc. for the citywide drainage master plan in an amount not to exceed $520,885, which includes the base proposal of $495,885 plus $25,000 for additional project expenditures. In other words, a contingency, which is approximately 5% of the contract amount, and appropriate $121,000 needed for design, project management, and contingency from the unencumbered general fund for capital projects, and authorize the city manager to execute all contract documents in final form and format as approved by the city attorney.
Do I have a second?
I'll second your motion.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, look forward to the work.
Appreciate it, Steve.
All right, new business. We have item number 10.
Steve's still up there.
I know,
Just holding the podium.
It's your night, man.
he's spending the night. Immediate drainage repairs. Yeah, do you want to?
I like standing, though.
Okay.
It
All right.
makes me more imposing or something, I guess. I don't know.
Imposing. We're not.
Yeah,
threatened.
what engineers are imposing, I guess.
Take it away, sir.
Okay, so at one of the previous council meetings, in fact, I think it was the October 8th one, where we discussed the storm drain master plan, one of the requests from council was to look into what other drainage deficiencies do we have. Now, if you can go back and look at the Malaga Cove groundwater intrusion item, the storm drain master plan, all these are tied together. The information that we presented here in this report is really just a combination of items that we've received from whether they're residents, staff observations, the public works staff going out there, people calling into the public works department saying there's a hole in the street or the street keeps getting worse. It's just a combination of things. So it's not a completely exhaustive list of all the locations that we have issues with. It's items that within the last couple of years that I've been made aware of, as well as items that were being discussed probably a decade ago. Maybe didn't go any further. Maybe they started. Maybe they stopped. I can't say for certain. But I saw things all the way back into 1998 for storm drain projects that were constructed. And anyway, so the list I've presented here, they're the top 5 items that I've identified. Item number 1 is the Torrance Boundary Trail. For obvious reasons, in fact, if you look in the report, I did include a picture. This is on sheet 1 of 6 for all the maps. You can see a picture up in the upper left-hand corner there of what looks to be a trail. So that occurred last December, and there's a couple other locations that we've identified as well. The Public Works crew tried putting in some gravel to try to minimize that, but there's additional work that's needed. And the maps, if you can look through, you can see that the numbers correspond with the numbers on page 2 of the staff report. So that's that one item on Torrance Boundary Trail. The other ones, 2 through 5, those are primarily locations that have pavement depressions that are evident and/or growing. And what I mean by that is that there's sags in the street. So we've identified that there's a sag in the street and there's a storm drain or lateral under it or very, very close to it. And so those are, it may look like those costs are a lot for a small piece of pipe, but once you get down there, we had issues on Via Cataluna, I want to say about a year ago, where we had some sinking. You'll notice on here there's two other locations on Via Cataluna. That pipe over there is a 36-inch corrugated metal pipe, put in probably 50 years ago, 60 years ago, that is at its lifespan. And as soon as we opened it up down there, you can see that there's an issue where the pipe just fell apart or disintegrated. And as soon as you start digging a little bit more, you end up seeing, oh, there's another piece. You have to either close your eyes with blinders or you keep digging. So even though they look simple, 50 linear feet, I mean, if you think of a piece of pipe, 2 sticks of pipe, maybe it's $5,000 total for those 2 sticks of pipe, but there's a lot more that goes into that. So anyway, the recommendations we have for the top 5, Torrance Boundary Trail, 2 through 5, sags in the street, which obviously affect the driving public, pedestrians walking, and then Lucera Circle, I think was the other one. Was it? Make sure.
Yeah, number 15.
Yeah, okay. So there's another picture on that first page, page 1 of 6. The opposite side of the page, you can see what that looks like over there. And that drains off into the city of Torrance. It's in a ravine that is extremely difficult to get to. And we'd really have to kind of poke around to find out more of where that water is coming from too. We've done some video analysis of it, and we know that it's coming from Lucera Circle and going out, but we can't just put a piece of pipe back there. You put a pipe back there, you're concentrating the flow. Where is that flow going to go? So we could be lucky the fact that this pipe is corroded because it's not concentrated. It's flowing in multiple directions.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned that for Lucera Circle, you kind of did some videoing and you are trying to figure out what's going on there. On the Torrance Boundary Trail, do you know what caused that chasm? And so that when we put in a solution, it's not going to happen again. Do we know what the genesis of that was?
In the area of that one picture, you can see that there's a white pipe sticking in from the side, which is not installed by the city. So I'm sorry?
That's nice.
So we are pursuing that through a code case as well. And I'm not saying that that's the reason why it happened. We had a large amount of rain that occurred back at the end of last year, as well as the beginning of this year, which you get one pebble moving and it just kind of goes along with it. There's a lot of other locations throughout the trail that we did have some minor erosion that got into the street. Public Works crews were able to get back at it and clean it. But
Is your expectation, though, that the solution that's put in at the Torrance Boundary Trail will be able to handle if we have another heavy rain this year or next year or 5 years from now? Is that what the intent is?
that's the goal, yeah.
Patching the hole?
Yeah, and we have to go down a real fine line there because we can't just throw dirt back in there, nor rock, because it'll just wash away. We also can't put steps in there because as soon as we do that, then we make it inaccessible. So we have to really kind of look at how we're going to fix that to make it stable, but also make it accessible again.
And this is definitely 100% PVE issue? There's no help from Torrance here?
And do we know if there are houses there or?
Kind of sounds like that's behind Luke's house. What did you do over there, Luke?
Does he have the koi pond? You been draining your koi pond?
We've actually had some input.
Is this totally an us problem or is this a shared problem?
The drainage that comes off of any of the Torrance properties,
Because they're higher, right?
yeah, and they drain to the front, they drain to the streets in front, to the north.
Are they slope?
Yeah, they're sloped back that way. Now, granted, anything's possible, that they could have regraded the back of their property. Haven't checked that, though. There are other locations along the trail. If you go further east, I can't think of the name of the street, but there is a street that parallels the trail, which is lower than the trail. And those residents on Torrance had requested that we fix the trail because the dirt runs off onto their property. So it is a mixture, but typically they've been higher and they drain out to the street to the north.
Can we talk a little bit about the sagging roads?
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. What would you like?
Interesting use of language.
Well, you know, I drove around and I visited all but two of these today, and a handful of these I'm definitely like, oh yeah, we need to do something. And others I'm just like scratching my head. And so on some of these ones that are cited as having sags in the street, I couldn't detect the sag, and so I'm trying to figure out, I'd like just a little bit more context around the sags, and do we know what causes them? Have we been able to video them? Do we know that it's a storm drain issue or something else? And then my other question is, and what's the, kind of what's the urgency of fixing these versus if we don't fix it, what's the risk? So can you just give us a little tutorial on sagging streets?
So let's go to the last part of the question first.
Okay.
The concern of why are we going and doing these versus others? Well, we've looked at it as that these are ones within a road where it could affect pedestrians and or vehicles.
So is the risk like a sinkhole or?
No,
Because they're not, it's not like the ski jump on PV Drive South, right? It's, you go along and you're just sort of like, "Hmm,
Who named that the ski jump, after all?
I don't know. I don't know.
We've just noticed that on some of these, it's increasing, the
Okay.
depth of it. And it's more of, you don't want your pavement going down in any certain way. And what we've done then is to go back even, the question before that is, we've looked at where these are located and tried to see, okay, is there a permit that was issued there recently? A gas company, Edison, Cal Water, whatever, nothing there. Then we look at the plans to see what it is that's around there, and sure enough, they're either around a catch basin, around a lateral, or storm drain pipe. And that's where we come down to the idea that there's an issue out there. Now, regardless of whether or not there is an issue to the pipe, the pavement has to be fixed. At least that's my recommendation. You've got an issue with potential road failure there. And not that anybody's going to go into it, or, you know, we're not going to have a sinkhole, but we're going to have issues in the public right-of-way with people driving through those. So I didn't
Yeah, I guess
know.
that's why I'm confused, because I had to go 3 times along Campesina here, and I still couldn't find the 2475 sag between 2 manholes. I've seen the one on Via Cornell. I've seen the one on Las Vegas. That definitely needs to be done. So I saw those. I couldn't really see a depression at 2100 Paseo Del Mar, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. You know, we call these immediate needs, and just like Walker told us we had immediate needs for City Hall, and here we are 18 months later, and they must not have been that immediate, because it's still there. So I'm just trying to grapple with, this is a big list. If you take all of them, it's $2.6 million. We don't have that really kind of sitting around anywhere. And so I'm just trying to understand what truly is urgent, what can we put off as we figure out our revenue situation. So that's what I'm
Well, or
trying to
put it-
grapple with, is because I drive, you know, I was driving on Monte Malaga. Now, you want to talk about a sag in the road. I was just like, oh, okay, now there's a sag. I wonder what RPV's doing about this. So,
Well, I mean, and actually, piggybacking off of that is just in the context of the master plan. So what really makes, are some of these putting the cart before the horse before we get the master plan to really know what our prioritization is? Like when you say, okay, you know, you got to fix a sag, you don't want to have a road failure, you know, right-of-way failure, you know, Okay, but are we talking failure in a month? Are we talking failure in a year, 5 years? I mean, what, so how do we know that? And, should we wait till we have the master plan? Like how do you?
So you had two questions there that I could discern.
At least two questions I realized after
okay.
I said it. Sorry.
So I'm going to go back to the one that I heard. We were talking about the master plan. Should we, how do we prioritize
We
these,
marry
right?
those, yeah.
So if you recall, we were talking about the master plan, that the first half of the master plan that they can provide information on is the material deficiencies. That's probably the easiest way to say it, as opposed to saying the pipe is falling apart. It's like the one on Lucera Circle. That's a no-brainer. You see it, that's falling apart. The master plan is not necessarily for that. The master plan is going to look at your system as a whole for the entire city. It's going to say, all right, your hotspots are here because you have flooding in this area. Why is it flooding? An example would be over on Villa Silva. 3705, I think, is the address. We were just recently fixed a catch basin because the water wouldn't drain in the street. It was at a low point and it kept draining over the curb. That's something that they may identify as a hotspot, but then we'd have to investigate it further. Okay. In this case, we didn't have the master plan to go by, but we knew that something was happening out there. And sure enough, we found out the pipe was broken, pipe wasn't connected, whatever it was, we fixed it and going forward. The projects that are listed here, I look at those as not something that a master plan would necessarily be for. Yes, they'd be identified. But these are things that we've encountered through resident concerns. There was the one, let's see, 2100 Paseo del Mar. Depression in bluff and street, existing pipe outfall from bluff approximately 50 linear feet. Part of that is not even visible from where you're on the street. It's the bluff that's going over.
Like going out the bluff, right?
Yeah. So those things, yeah, I'm sure that the Stormwater Master Plan would pick it up, but those are things that staff, before me, had identified. And so now to go forward to I think your last question was, well, how do we know? What if we don't do these now? What if the items after 5, except for Lucera Circle, have been around for a while. How long? I can't really tell. But, there's some low-hanging fruit down at the bottom or in the middle of the page there. We have a wood lid on a catch basin. And wood doesn't work well with water. I don't know how that ever got put there in the first place, but it's not a matter of just taking the wood off and putting some concrete on there, but it's been there for a while. So do we do that now?
What does replace a wood lid? What should that properly look like?
A reconstructed catch basin,
Which is made of?
concrete.
So that's
Steel.
the reason for the price tag. That's why I was like, how can a wood lid cost 15 grand? I'm like,
Yeah.
just make it in the shop.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. I understand the questions about the master plan here, but I think I'm going to go up even higher than the master plan, because this is only dealing with some of the critical issues that you've identified that are in our community. If you go back, and I'll pick on one as an example, when we had the roadway issues and looking at the index, and they were talking about Palos Verde Drive West and the fact that the pavement is deteriorating. It has nothing to do with the storm drains, but it's a major need that needs some addressing, or it's going to be more costly as we go forward. And what my encouragement is to our Public Works Department is that we have got to begin. We probably can't do it immediately or get it all done in one pass, but we need to identify all of these, the 15 that are on this list, plus all the ones that may deal with streets, that may deal with water in Malaga Cove, it may deal with, sanitary sewer issues, and, we need to get a global inventory of the challenges that we're facing. And I'll make a couple of comments. The one on here, number 12, 2900 Paseo del Mar, that's obviously near and dear to my heart because it's right in front of my house. But
Never mind, we're not doing it.
Plus, that's the most.
Never mind, we're not doing it.
I know. But that's also where the street, half the street was missing. And that's been on the list ever since I got on the council, and it was on there beforehand, and it's one of these items that we keep kicking down the road and we don't address. But we don't know what the risks are associated with it until we wake up one morning, as I remember the morning when the street went down into Christmas Bay, or what?
Tree Cove.
Christmas Tree Cove, excuse me. And, it became a one-way street. How much more of that, I don't know. But my encouragement is, I think you've got 4 or 5, I think, immediate projects like the Torrance boundary. I don't know how we cannot put some money towards that immediately, and maybe a couple of the others. But I do think that as we think prospectively, and we look at public works challenges, we've got to identify all of these, and we've got to put them on the table. Eventually, we're going to need to prioritize. Is it more important to repair Palos Verde Drive West than it is to fix the 2900 Paseo del Mar?
Yes. I got to keep the humor going, man. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. But I use that as examples because we have got far more needs than we are going to have ability to deal with in a realistic time frame. But we have to start prioritizing and inventorying.
So before we go too far around direction, is there any public comment on this item? No, okay. That's part of where I was going, David, is I'd like to understand what are those immediate things that we need to do. Torrance boundary, yes. Lucera Circle, yes. Via Las Vegas, yes. I mean, a car can bottom out there.
Well,
The other
Lucera
ones-
Circle's not really,
Well, it's like eroding the whole hillside here.
it's not on his priority list.
It was in the staff report. He said 1 through 5 and 15, right?
Yeah,
1 through 5 and 14.
No, 14's like 10 grand.
I know,
It's like a
that's why I
drainage.
like
Oh,
it.
14. 1300 via Romero. Drainage channel lid needs, I'm sorry, yes, the drainage channel lid. That's basically between RPV and PVE.
Yeah.
There was one of those diamond steel plates that covers a channel going across, and for some reason, it's missing.
Was
So-
that your priority, 14 and not 15?
I'm sorry, yes, 14 was a priority because of the fact that it's a pedestrian issue, much like 1 through 5.
Yeah, it
So-
says 1 through 5 and 14.
Liability.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry.
In answer to that question, I think what we ought to ask Steve and the Public Works to come back with, take these top 5 priorities, drill down a little bit more on what is really going to be required. Are these estimates good estimates? And then come back to us so we can begin to start ticking them off. I think that the Torrance boundary one, that trail is, I'm worried about letting that go through this winter without having some.
Well, he is so-
To be clear, are you asking him to proceed with getting those items bid so that he can have real cost estimates, or are you asking for
Do
a
we have
better
enough of a
guess?
definition of the request for remediation right now that you could take it to bid?
We need to do a little bit further investigation on every single one of these.
That's what I assumed. That's why I'm asking
Oh,
the
then
question.
what's the action
Let
item?
me jump in here. The point of bringing this to you, this was
Provide direction.
We
to
request,
provide direction, but also to bring this out to you. This started for me on an email from a Torrance resident about Torrance Boundary Trail. And then I started asking staff, and then they took me out there, and I was like, oh my Lord, this is crazy. What's going on here? I don't know why it's not been addressed. I'm not throwing stones at anybody. But as we started talking about it, it takes time and money just to even investigate. It takes, if it's internal staff time or HR Green staff time or whomever, to put it. And so we wanted to bring this to the council. I asked them they came up with a big list. Obviously, we can't tackle all of those. They prioritized 1 through 5 and 14.
Yeah.
So that's 6 that staff is recommending that we do something about now. Now is not tomorrow, but now is the council fully understands that staff's going to be working on this, and you're going to start seeing some activity around this. I asked about, I think it was the Via Las Vegas. I said, while I went out to Torrance Boundary, I go, what are those candlestick cones with the caution tape around it? They go, oh, the street's sagging. I'm like, how long has that been there? A couple months. I was like, what's our plan? Well, we don't know. Well, so that's why this is in front of you. So I think all we're looking for tonight is if you concur with staff's recommendations, 1 through 5 and 14. We don't have money set aside for this. We don't have anything, but we will get working on it, and we will keep you appraised, and at some point, we'll bring an appropriation to handle this.
But are you, go ahead.
We'll just go down the row here,
Okay.
Did you say down the road?
down the row.
Not road.
I thought you were. I thought you.
Sagging, the
The
sagging.
sagging road.
I thought you were topping
Sagging
my
row.
ability there. In all seriousness, I think honestly the answer to your question is because of the lack of funding sources over the years, going back to Measure D and before, and I'll even go back further. There was a utility tax. I don't remember the year, Don. It was in your presentation. Maybe you know that.
2003.
There you go. So, that was there. Why at that time they chose not to renew it or they didn't have support for it, I don't know, but,
Because they did a
Well, it
sewer
flipped
tax
to a sewer
instead.
tax.
okay.
And then it stopped in 2013.
Okay.
Then we didn't do
So
anything.
now we'll go to 2013, and why did we lose
And then
the
we didn't
revenue
do
source?
anything.
Anyway, the point is, and this sort of coincides with David's comments, it's very difficult as both a resident and a council member to sit here and look at all this because the natural reaction, I'll just pretend I'm sitting in the audience, do all of it. Right? It's crazy. No, we don't want this, and this. It's crazy. Go do it all. Oh, what's our funding source? So the answer is we need to do all of it. And I have a feeling these are just the ones that we found, and we don't know about the rest, right?
I think he did some checking. It sounds, yeah.
There's a lot more that has to be added.
I'm not chucking anybody under. I'm just saying it's, the fiscal impact is probably greater than this, and I'm not, just looking to invent taxes or invent new whatever, but we need to address the whole problem holistically and actually really solve it.
But there's also items that he said have been on there since 1998, and we haven't dealt with them, and, so far we're fine. I mean, maybe that's, crossing your fingers. I mean, I could more see, and so my only hesitation with what Carrie's comment was, if we say, yeah, 1 through 5 and number 14, and we think that's about your list says it has it at 550,000, okay, we can probably come up with 500,000 if we have, okay. But then you go off and start doing it and come back and say, oh, remember the 550,
It's
really, that was $1
950.
million. So I think that's the only thing that makes me afraid. And so for me, I mean, what about the end? Because there is, as we all know, there is also a human bandwidth bisschen of actually getting things done, right? You're just a physical ability of being able to get stuff done. And we're, what are we, a little over a quarter into the fiscal year? I mean, I'd probably say, okay, yep, 1 through 5 and 14, not to exceed 500,000 or 600,000, whatever the number, but a number that says, look, in this fiscal year, we're willing to come up with this much more and stretch it as far as you can. I don't know, I'd probably, you hear what I'm saying? I don't want you to go down this road of these 6 items and then think that we've said okay.
I'd like to disagree a little bit with that.
Okay.
I don't have any problem. I think they need to do the further analysis and research in order to get to a more finite number. I don't want to say, here's $500,000 tonight and go with that. I want them to come back by these 5 or 6 projects individually, and if you come in with 1 or 2 of them at a time, that's fine with me too, but we understand in more detail what it is that it's going to cost to remediate these issues.
6 items, yeah. No, I agree with that. I was more trying to say, don't think that we just said, yeah, fine, go off and do those 6 at any cost.
No, we're not hearing that.
I don't want
Yeah,
to give them a
okay.
cost number tonight. I want to
Yeah.
get more.
One other
Analysis.
suggestion, if we're going to go to this effort, don't mess around with the $10,000 and $15,000 items. Just get them off the list.
Like,
That's,
wouldn't you just rather get, like you even said,
Well-
there's all this low-hanging fruit. It's like, and maybe cheap doesn't mean quick and easy. I'm probably thinking, okay, cheap must mean quick and easy, but maybe it doesn't. But
I'm just trying to save
like, get it off
Steve
the
from having to
list.
step up
Check
here
it
again
off.
and tell
Check
us
it
why
off.
we have wood lids. I mean,
I mean, that's what normally would be on our annual
Correct.
repair list, right?
Just
That-
repairs,
Like we
yeah.
did at Zumaya, we did.
Right.
other places. I'm somewhere kind of here in between Victoria and David. I would like to see a little bit more analysis, at least on a couple of the 1 through 5s, just because, as I said, I drove around and I couldn't tell what the issue was, and other residents are, some residents are going to say, yeah, do it all, and others are going to say, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong here. It's perfectly fine. So
Yeah,
let's do the
they'll be the first
additional
ones to blame us when it
analysis
washes out.
to
Right.
justify it. Well, but then you've got the justification that this is why we're doing it. And then I also agree that what we really need to be doing is, especially since a number of these have been on the list for a long time, is we need to develop that list in concert with our master plan and be able to go to the residents and say, hey, guys, I want to talk to you about our drainage issues, and we know we have a lot of rain, and here's the list that we've compiled, and as a result, between this and these great people that we hired to do a master plan, we need to come up with X number of dollars, and let's talk about how we can fund that. And my guess is, I wasn't paying that much attention back then, but my guess is in 2003, that was the conversation that resulted in a sewer tax, and that's why we still have a little bit of money in the sewer fund. And so we haven't done anything for 11 years, and now it's time to do this with this, and then we'll have to do the same thing with the roads and the same thing with the sewers, but we need to develop that list and let residents know this is what it costs in order to keep your city smooth.
Madam Mayor, if I could add just one thing too. A lot of that is shown in the CIP document and the fact that it's unfunded.
I'm guessing we have the list.
It's not as,
Lee,
but to answer the question earlier too of, well, if these are on a list, why aren't we addressing them? The point is, we do have that list. We have a finite amount of money each year.
Well, I know why we're not addressing them. We have a finite amount of money and bandwidth.
and people.
But we have addressed some of them in the sense that this last year with Zumaya and Villa Silva. People may laugh at the fact that, okay, there's a wood lid on the catch basin, because I did when I first saw it. But it's not as easy as just picking that wood lid up and putting something back.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it. It's a tiny little box, but where does it go? What is it connected to? Or why is it even there? So that's what I'm saying. You can see that there's a wood lid there, but as I found out the hard way, there's a lot of things around here that weren't necessarily done the way you would normally, maybe engineering-wise, do it. So that's all. I mean,
Sure.
it's,
Sure.
I have two more questions.
Go ahead, I have one after you. Okay.
So one of my questions is, so we talked about the sagging streets, and then a number of these talk about just replacing certain number of feet of storm drain in catch basins. What's the issue there, and why are they on the list?
there's some
what was the
videos that were
sign?
done in previous time, in the past, that showed the pipe was failing or it was corroding. I don't list on here what type of pipe they are, but on these larger sections, the vast majority is this corrugated metal pipe, or CMP, and that has a lifespan of about 50 years. And some of these locations, it's much longer than that, and it just corrodes out. So I don't have the exact, location of the video, but the
So you
staff.
have video that shows it. I was trying to figure out, how do you know that a pipe under the road is corroded? So there's
Yeah, because there have been videos over time that we just have a long laundry list of them.
Okay, actually, I had two more questions. Okay. The item number 16, PV Drive West, the 300 block, is that part of the area that's getting redone this year?
No. So this one, it was actually a very interesting item that was listed. The county provided this, and the county said there's a 42-inch drain line that connects off into their system, and I don't know if it's an MTD, which is a miscellaneous transfer drain, that was transferred over to the county or not. I couldn't find that. But the county said that you have a 42-inch pipe, and you have a lot of debris that keeps getting in there, and that, by putting in a debris basin, that would solve the problem of all that debris getting into the storm drain system and potentially causing issues downstream or waterboard issues. So this is a suggestion. It's not a bad suggestion, but you can see the cost.
Would better street sweeping solve that?
This is over a larger area that's draining to it, so I can't answer that about street sweeping.
I just notice a lot of stuff along the gutters and right along all the storm drains, and, I mean,
The picture they showed me was pretty intense about the 2/3 of the way of the pipe that was filled with dirt and debris and everything else.
So this was a county suggestion, the county suggests that we do this?
Yes.
This sounds like a Janice Hahn problem. Just saying.
okay, my last question is, item number 13, via Montemar, clean out existing debris basin. And you
Yes.
just talked about cleaning out debris. Isn't that what we hired Ron's maintenance to do, clean out?
Not this.
They
This
don't
is a
do this?
debris
This is
basin,
different.
like.
Which is
the-
different than a catch basin?
Yeah, so the debris basin is a large area that's going to collect and allow water to kind of perk out. The dirt will sit in there and can be cleaned out over time. We have a couple of these throughout town. This one, I think, actually has been cleaned out in the past. Anthony's crews were aware of it, but there's a large area that has to be cleaned out. And the construction, to jump over to item number 16, would be a very similar thing. The intent is to collect the debris there and clean it out. But if you collect the debris and you don't clean it out, then you have problems.
And we have to actually hire someone to do that. That's not something that in-house staff can do like they did on Agua whatever way.
It's a good question because it was presented on a list prepared by Public Works staff some time ago. So I'm sure that's something that could be asked.
Okay, your turn.
Oh, sorry, quick question. In your staff report, in the financial impact, you talk about that we don't have any appropriation this fiscal year for this type of project, but we do have a $275,000 appropriation for next year?
Yeah, in 25.
Is that really appropriated, or does that just mean it's on a plan? There's
plan.
projects on a plan?
It's on the plan.
On a plan.
It's on a plan, right? We didn't actually set it, we
haven't-
didn't actually
we haven't-
appropriate it, did we?
Nope.
No,
Yeah,
we
I
just
didn't
do
think
one
so.
year at a time.
That's what I thought, so that's when he said it was appropriated, I was like, when did we do that?
Should be
Okay.
appropriated.
We didn't
It's
tell
just,
you.
yeah, where was I?
So we could move that forward.
Well, that's half the money,
Well, I think.
but it's not appropriated for, if it
Right.
were appropriated, I would say, okay, hey, move it from that year to this year, but it's not.
Can I jump
But
in?
you could still use that money.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yes, sir?
We are not asking for money tonight.
No.
We
I know, but you're going to, but you're gonna.
Two steps ahead.
But we don't want to start
Okay,
playing around. We just really, the whole point of this was to, look, nobody wants to bring bad news. But as I said, we want the council to know that we're identified these. We want the community to know that we're aware of these now, and we're going to start addressing them. And when you start seeing movement on this, and some of this might not come back for months, it might come back in a month, but you guys will get multiple bites at the apple with this.
Well,
Okay.
my recommendation, or I'll put it in, if we need a motion, I'll do it that way too, is that we ask that these 5 or 6 items be further and analyzed and researched, and a status report come back to the council as soon as that information is available. And it does not have to mean that all of them have to be done at once. You can bring them piecemeal, but I would put personally, number one priority on the Torrance boundary situation because of the time of year that we're in and the severity of the problem. And I think we need to address them one at a time, and the chips are going to have to fall as they may.
Do you actually need a motion, or do you just need
I
direction?
think it was just direction, right? It was just an update.
I agree with
Is
his
that
direction.
adequate?
I agree.
Okay,
Boom,
are we done with this item?
done.
All right,
Thank you, Steve.
thank you, Steve. You can take a rest.
He's
Let's
still
keep him up
standing
there.
there now.
Oh, it's-
Why is he
It's
still
early. He's
standing
got
there?
another
Stay there.
couple hours.
That's it.
But there might be more.
Okay, council member reports and tentative agenda items. Anyone? I have one, while you guys are thinking. This is a tentative agenda item. You know, e-bikes have been a common topic among residents, and I know PD has been actively putting on education programs. I see in the Daily Breeze that a number of cities have adopted ordinances related to e-bikes. And, I'd be interested in having an agenda item where staff advises us on whether this is something our city should be pursuing.
I agree with that.
All right, so we have 3 nodding heads for a future agenda item.
Just,
Just
I'm going to
add
ask
to
the,
this.
I'm going to ask the famous words, because there's a few things we've done here over time that I regret. Is it enforceable? Whatever we do, is it enforceable?
And that's, I think, what part of the advice should come from as he looks at what Manhattan Beach, Hermosa, and RPV just did.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
We can bring options to the council.
Thank you, but I agree with Councilmember Kemp that if we're not going to, if we can't enforce it, then
And
Save ourselves.
one of the immediate questions for consideration, as you pull together the report, is on-road, off-road.
All right, that was me. Someone else? No. Nobody else has anything to report out?
No.
No one's done any really cool stuff?
Not that they want to report out.
All right, well, I think this,
David and I both worked very hard on the 2 items that were in the consent agenda for the golf club, so we're very appreciative of your approval.
Yes. It's
and not
taken
pulling
months.
it? All right,
Say that.
with that, I adjourn our meeting here at 8:15 PM.
Thanks for coming, everyone.